Hey there, my name is Timothy Roberts. I'm an independent cymbalsmith, and in this video, we are going to talk about hammers and what different styles of hammering does to your cymbals. So I have an unhealthy obsession with different kinds of hammers. I own probably a solid 10, 15 that all have different uses. I just got a new batch of hammers, and I want to give a big shout out to Nicholas Downing. He makes the coolest Cymbalsmith specific hammers, and I've been using his hammers for years now. They have many thousands of strikes on them, probably tens of thousands at this point, and they are wonderful. So I just got a batch of new hammers in, and I needed a topic for the Friday batch release, so I decided, you know what, let's just do a video all about hammering. So let's dive in now. So I like to break down the different styles of hammering I do into two types. There's compression hammering and deformation hammering. Depending on the style of hammering, the type of hammering that we do, we can be focusing on one or the other. Now, both are happening at the same time. Every time you swing a hammer into a piece of bronze, you are compressing the metal and you're deforming it. But we can kind of lean one side or the other to get different uses, different sounds out of our metal. So I have here a cymbal blank. It has a pressed bell. It's a 20-inch that weighs 2,559 grams. And at this stage in the ball game, it's totally blank. It is called a blank. And the goal now is to put hammering into the metal to start growing the shape. Now, if you get a cymbal from a major manufacturer, they are not doing this method. They have gigantic presses that are taking the cymbals and pressing them into shape. The method that I and many other cymbalsmiths do, independent cymbalsmiths, is what we are doing is the old method that they did 50, 60, 70 plus years ago, where you sit there and you hammer, and every individual hammer strike is slowly getting your shape where you want it to be. So it takes many hundreds of hammer strikes to take a cymbal like this, a cymbal blank like this, that's totally flat. Oftentimes it's crazy tacoed all over the place, and it takes many hundreds of strikes to build the shape up into a usable profile. And you know, we start out and it looks kind of rough like this, and we start to build the shape and it's all out of whack, it's not flat, and we keep going, we keep going, we keep going. We're deforming, we're compressing, and we're just building the shape into the desired profile. So I wanted to highlight three of the new hammers that I got. Now, what we have here is three different types of hammers. I got one of the Nicholas Downing, he calls it the Mangiello, so Mike Mangiello, shout out to my buddy. This is a big, heavy hammer, a lot of weight. I think it's a little over 2 pounds, close to 2.5 pounds. And it's got a pretty big radius, but it provides me a fairly large strike point on the metal. So when I come in here and I swing the hammer, I get a mark like that. Now if I go in and I do a little bit of hammering to this guy, I start to go around like that. I get all the way around the cymbal, and then I have one overlay round of hammering. Then I'm flipping it over, doing the opposite side, so on and so forth. So a hammer like this that has a lot of weight and a fairly large strike zone is going to do a good job at compressing the metal. It's going to do a good job of giving me the wider strike zone, filling up more surface area. And a hammer like this is a great shaping hammer. Now I've got this guy, he calls this the dimpler. It is ground down to a very, very fine point. So if I come in here and I swing this guy, I swung it kind of hard, but you can see that little tiny point in there. It's a lot smaller. All of the weight is being focused on a much smaller surface area. So we have those two sides, really wide, spread out surface area, really tight. All of the weight is going into a smaller point. And we have all the gradients in between. I have another hammer over there that's like nearly 3 pounds and it has a really wide strike zone, but I gotta lift that thing up and I gotta really use the weight of it, drop the weight of it to really get a good imprint on the metal. And so I use the myriad of different hammers to get different styles of, well, it's different styles of hammering, but it's ultimately to get different sounds. So the more we focus on deforming, which we're gonna be doing that when we as cymbalsmiths are trying to move metal fast, a lot of times we're gonna be using a heavy hammer that has a smaller strike zone. So this is a hammer he made for me, double-sided. This has a really flat surface, this has a really rounded over surface. And when I use this guy, on the more rounded over surface, I get a tighter, more ball shaped, really good for deformation. When I flip it over to this side, it's more of a shadow. So it's this guy versus this guy. It's more of a shadow and it's spread out a little bit more and it's a little bit more subtle. So what does this have to do with cymbal sounds? So when we build a shape, oftentimes different smiths have different techniques, but my technique is typically to go in first. A lot of deformation. I'll go on the underside, really swing the hammer hard, use a smaller diameter face to really get the metal to move. Then I flip it over and I do the same on the top and I'm kind of back and forth rocking it into shape. Once I start getting lift to my profile, I typically move to a hammer that has a little bit of a wider face, a little bit more spread out, and then I go really dense. And when I do that, I'm compressing the metal, doing a little bit of deformation, mostly compression, and I'm just building the shape up. So there's gonna be this layering type process. And I have some cymbals over here. I'll go pull one real quick. So this is a cymbal that's in process. And you can see I went in and I hammered it into shape, and then I lathed it, and then all these extra little dimples you see, a lot of them have been hammered on top of the initial lathing, and then I go back on top of that and lathe over top of that hammering. So it kind of leaves this dimension to the surface. It gives me a good topography. It's going to give me a little bit more control in my end result, the final sound that I have. So oftentimes you'll hear guys that will talk about cymbals and they'll say, yeah, it's heavily hammered or it's not hammered. Oftentimes they're referring to how much hammering do you see underneath the lathing or even on top of the lathing. And so every cymbal is hammered or pressed. Almost all of them have like machine hammering. But when you have the layered process, it gives you that crazy topography, which in general, way overgeneralizing here, but in general, it's going to give you a bit more control to the sound. If you see a cymbal that looks like it hasn't been hammered at all, it's probably from a major manufacturer. They probably pressed the shape, machine hammered it a little bit, and then they laid through all of the hammering, and so you really don't see hammering. You just see these nice, fine tonal grooves. That's not a worse thing, that's just a different sound. That means the cymbal's gonna be brighter, it's probably gonna sustain more, gonna have more shimmer and wash. We associate the cymbals that have overhammering or a lot of topography, we associate that with a drier, darker, more complex, sometimes trashy sound. All right, first up I'm gonna do the Mangiello that I started with, and I'm just gonna continue all the way around, and then I'll go to the Dimpler, and then to this double-sided guy, and we'll see what we get. I'm going for nice and wide and spread out so we can hopefully see the difference in the hammering style. So now, Dimpler. All right, we can see our bigger strikes and our little small tiny dimples. That's pretty good. It's going to get a little bit harder to see these, but now we're going to do the rounded over side on this double one, and I'm going to go in circles this time, and hopefully that'll kind of cause us to see what's going on a little bit more. So it's harder to see, but we kind of have it in between the dimpler and the big Mangiello hammer. It's kind of in the middle. It's giving me kind of a nice mixture between deformation and more compression style hammering. It's a good imprint, nice sharp lines, perfectly circular. So now I'm going to go starting here out to the edge with the flatter face of this same hammer. So you can kind of see in this zone right around here, the hammer strokes are a little bit more muted looking. So another thing you'll notice, maybe you'll notice, as I was going around, the metal is starting to curve up on me. That's what happens. So as I'm hammering into this, it's going to start to curve. That's when I come in and I flip it over and I start working from this side. And then it'll start to because it's curved down, it'll start to kind of pull up, and then I go back on top and I go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and usually in about 30 to 45 minutes of solid hammering, I have a pretty usable shape, and then I can decide what to do after that. So the one thing I haven't talked about yet is the force of my strike. So if I could think in my mind about the style of hammering I'm leaning towards. Am I trying to compress the metal and grow it into a shape, or am I trying to deform it fast? And then I could use more lift of my arm. I'm trying to keep this all loose. I don't want to grip super hard and just like slam it necessarily. Sometimes there's a place for really throwing the hammer hard, but you want to use more the lift of your arm. I try to use the lift of my arm and the weight of the hammer and then keep a really nice loose grip. I also never want to put my thumb on top, because I strike, all that energy is going into here and destroys your hands. I play jazz, a lot of styles of music, but I studied jazz, and even doing it with proper technique, my fine motor skills just get shot after hammering for a while. It's kind of one of the sacrifices of being a cymbalsmith, is that you destroy your body. So with this dimpler hammer, I could come in and like tippy tap so that I'm not getting as much deformation and I'm just trying to more so compress small points. Or I could swing the hammer harder and get more of an imprint. Hard strikes, we can see what's happening is the metal all around that strike is wanting to dive down into it. And it's being pushed pretty hard on the bottom, right? So now I could just go in and just gentle taps. And I'm getting a lot less of that hard boundary around the strike and a lot less of the surrounding metal diving into my strike. I'm not pushing the material near as much. Now we'll go to big boy. So up near the bell, super hard. Big strikes, wider surface area, getting the movement of the surrounding metal kind of billowing up and trying to kind of flow down into that strike. Tippy taps now. Much more mild. So that's where we could take the hammer, but we also have the use of our arm. I'm not, like I said, I'm not gripping strong and throwing it. I'm just lifting my arm up higher and dropping it to get more force, and I'm really like letting it go. You could easily pull the hammer out of my hand if you were to come up and grab it. I'm not gripping it tight. So we have the shape of the hammer, we have the shape of the face, how wide or how narrow, and then we have the use of our arm and how much lift we have. So you can kind of see how there's a million different ways to hammer. And I could use this little dimpler hammer, and I could tippy tap, and I could make a whole cymbal with this guy, even though, I mean, it would take a really long time, but I could do it. So pretty interesting, huh? All right, that's the video on hammering. I'll do more videos in the future where we can kind of see this stuff and how it affects the final outcome of certain cymbals. But if you look at my YouTube channel, you can see a lot of cymbals that I make, and you can look at that surface topography. You'll see a lot of cymbals that have a heavily textured surface, and that's where I'm going in. I'm doing this layering process. Shape it, lathe it, hammer more, lathe more, sometimes even another round of hammering and lathing before it's finished. So drop a comment below. Let me know what you think about this. Have you ever heard anyone talk about hammering styles and different techniques? Drop any questions that you might have, and let me know if there's an offshoot of this topic that you would like to see further fleshed out in a video. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and hit the bell if you want notifications. Until next time, I'm Timothy Roberts. See you guys later.